Every culture that has ever existed on Earth, separated by oceans, by centuries, by languages that share not a single word, has told the same stories. The hero who leaves home and faces the darkness alone. The wise old figure who appears at exactly the right moment. The trickster who breaks every rule and somehow reveals the truth. The great mother who gives life and takes it back. Ancient Greece told these stories. So did ancient India. So did the Norse. So did the Aztecs, the Egyptians, the Aboriginal Australians, the tribes of sub-Saharan Africa. No contact, no shared history. The same stories. Carl Jung looked at this, and instead of calling it coincidence, instead of filing it away as a curious footnote in the history of anthropology, he asked the question nobody else had thought to ask. What if these stories are not coming from culture? What if they are coming from us? What if there is something so deep in the structure of the human mind, so ancient, so universal, so hardwired into what we are, that every civilization that has ever existed has independently dreamed the same dreams? He called them archetypes. And once you see them in mythology, in film, in the people around you, in yourself, you cannot unsee them. Jung's theory of archetypes begins with a concept he called the collective unconscious. You already know about the personal unconscious, the part of your mind that holds your memories, your repressed feelings, the experiences that shaped you, but that you no longer consciously carry. Jung believed there was a deeper layer beneath that. Not personal, not individual. Shared. A layer of the unconscious that belongs not to you specifically, but to the entire human species, accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years of human experience, encoded not in culture or language, but in the very structure of the psyche itself. And within that collective unconscious live the archetypes. Not images, not characters, patterns. Primordial patterns of energy and behavior that every human being carries, and that shape how we think, how we feel, how we love, how we fear, how we create meaning, whether we are aware of them or not. Let us talk about the ones that live most powerfully in all of us. The first is the hero. You know this pattern. You have felt it. The call to leave the familiar world behind. The moment when life as you knew it stops being enough. The threshold you must cross alone into uncertainty, into difficulty, into something that will require more of you than you currently believe you have. Every great story ever told follows this pattern. Every religion has a version of it. Every person who has ever grown in any meaningful way has lived it. The hero archetype is not about strength. It is about the willingness to face what frightens you, not because the fear disappears, but because the call is louder than the fear. Jung believed that when this archetype is activated in you, when life is calling you forward and you refuse to go, the energy does not simply vanish. It turns inward. It becomes depression, restlessness, the suffocating feeling of a life too small for what you are actually capable of. The hero is not optional. At some point, life will call. The only question is whether you answer. The second archetype is the shadow. We explored this in the last episode, but in the context of archetypes, the shadow takes on a larger meaning. As an archetype, the shadow represents everything the human psyche is capable of that we collectively refuse to acknowledge. Not just your personal darkness, the darkness of the species. Cruelty, destruction, the capacity for violence that lives in every human being, regardless of how civilized the surface appears. Jung was writing during the rise of Nazi Germany. He watched an entire nation project its collective shadow outward, onto a group of people, onto an enemy, onto anyone who could absorb the darkness that the culture refused to look at within itself. He wrote, "The most dangerous thing in the world is to be unconscious of your own shadow. Because what you will not own in yourself, you will find in others, and you will call it evil. And you will feel completely justified." The shadow archetype is not a reason for despair. It is a reason for humility. The person who knows they are capable of darkness and chooses otherwise is incomparably more trustworthy than the person who has convinced themselves they are only light. The third archetype is the self. Not the ego, the small, defended, socially constructed self that most of us mistake for who we are. The self, for Jung, is the totality of the psyche, the whole. The integrated center of everything you are, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, persona and soul, brought into unity. Jung represented the self as a circle, or a mandala, or a cross at the center of a sphere. Every culture that has ever existed has symbols for this. The Buddhist wheel, the Celtic cross, the Native American medicine wheel, the Hindu mandala. All of them, across thousands of years and thousands of miles, pointing at the same psychological truth. That the goal of a human life is not achievement, not success, not even happiness. It is wholeness. The process of becoming, as fully and as honestly as possible, everything that you are. Now here is what makes archetypes more than just an interesting theory. They are not things you observe from a distance. They are things that move through you. Think about the last time you felt genuinely called toward something, a project, a decision, a direction in life that felt right in a way you could not fully explain rationally. That was the hero archetype activating. Think about the last time someone triggered a reaction in you so disproportionate to what they actually did that it frightened even you. That was the shadow. Think about the moments in your life when everything felt integrated, when your values and your actions and your relationships and your inner life were all pointing in the same direction. When you felt, for a brief and luminous moment, completely yourself. That was the self. Jung was not asking you to study these patterns academically. He was asking you to recognize them in your own lived experience. Because the moment you can name what is moving through you, you stop being simply carried by it. There is one more archetype worth sitting with. Jung called it the wise old man, or in its feminine form, the great mother. This is the archetype of meaning, of guidance, of the deep knowing that exists beneath the noise of ordinary life. In mythology, it appears as Merlin, as Gandalf, as the oracle at Delphi, as every elder, every teacher, every moment of unexpected clarity that arrived exactly when you needed it. Jung believed this archetype is not just something we encounter in stories. It is something we can access within ourselves. The part of you that already knows, that has always known, that speaks not in arguments or logic, but in the quiet, persistent, impossible-to-ignore language of the gut. Most people spend their lives drowning that voice out, with noise, with distraction, with the opinions of everyone around them. Jung's invitation, through the archetypes, through all of his work, is always the same. Go inward, not as an escape from the world, as the only path to showing up in it fully. Jung died in 1961. His last words, according to those who were with him, were about a vision he had seen. He would not describe it fully. He only said it was beautiful. He left behind a body of work so vast and so strange that psychology still does not know what category to put it in. Too scientific for mystics, too mystical for scientists. But here is what survives all the debates about whether he was right. The patterns he described are real. You have felt them. Every story that has ever moved you, every film, every book, every myth that reached somewhere in you that logic cannot touch, did so because it spoke the language of the archetypes. The language that is older than any culture, older than any language. The language written into the structure of what you are. So the question Jung leaves you with is not about mythology. It is about your life. Which archetype is most alive in you right now? Is the hero being called? And are you answering? Is the shadow asking to be seen? And are you looking? Is the self, the whole, integrated, fully alive version of you, waiting? This is Philochemy. We will see you in the next one.